How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Livingston Live. We're here kicking off Hank Cherry's Fish with a Pro Week. You're here because you want to learn how to become a better jerkbait fisherman, and we're going to let you all know all about how to become a better jerkbait fisherman with Hank Cherry kicking off this month. So, everyone, welcome Hank Cherry, Bassmaster Champion, All-Star Champion, Rookie of the Year. Welcome, everyone. Hank Cherry coming on screen here. How's it going, Hank?
Going good. Glad to be here live from San Antonio.
Good. And Joel joining us from Seattle, Livingston Lures media man. Oh, you got your notepad ready to take
I
some
got a
notes?
notepad. I'm ready to go. This is going to be full of information. I'm excited about it.
Ready to learn, ready to learn. Well, perfect. Well, Joel, I want you to help kick it off. Brother, how are we going to learn from Hank today?
Well, so here's the deal. So Hank is the 2013 Bassmaster Elite Rookie of the Year, third place 2013 Bassmaster Classic, and a lot of it done on jerkbait.
That's perfect. Well, you know what? Why Hank is a jerkbait? We'll kick this off with the main question everyone wants to know. Hank, why is the jerkbait your main go-to technique for late winter, early spring?
There's really no other option for me this time of year, especially. A lot of the shad die-offs are going on around the country, and these bigger fish are starting to pull up out of the river channels, get on secondary points, main points, middles of pockets to feed on those shad. And all they're doing is preparing to go lay on the bank and spawn. Depending on what area you're in, this happens faster or slower. But it's an easy way to catch big fish, and you can find big groups of fish. And in my business, that's a key thing.
Perfect. Well, what makes it so specifically effective there? Those fish coming up off those river channels, what makes it effective? For those fish out the country, anyone can pick up a jerkbait in cold water and catch them.
Yeah, it's a very user-friendly bait because there's really no wrong way to do it. You got to figure out your own cadence. I would like to say that going out, don't try to overthink it. Don't try to let your electronics, if you have them, let them find the fish for you, and just kind of let the fish tell you what they want. If they want it fast or slow, sinking real slow, long pause, all that's just part of the preparation of going in and figuring out how to catch them.
Oh, that's perfect. Joel, you want to kick it off? What's going on up in your part of the country, and how can we use these jerkbaits to help us catch more fish?
That's actually a good question because it's relative to all over the country. So up here in the Pacific Northwest, we've got a series of conditions that are very similar to a lot of other regions in the country. And I think the one question that we've heard a lot of, Nick and Hank, before we got into this was, where exactly do you start? If you're going to fish for jerkbait in the wintertime, in the late winter, early spring, what exactly, Hank, are you looking for? And where would you look? One, two, or maybe even three locations that you would look to first throw jerkbait.
Well, the first thing I'm going to look for is the wildlife, whether it be coots, seagulls especially, because they're going to kind of key you in on where the bait is. Loons will do the same thing too, but they're usually out in deeper water, and you get into other game fish and stuff, and that could kind of mess up your bass fishing. So I'm going to find the bait. That's the first thing I'm going to do. You have to be around the bait this time of year to catch fish. If you're not around the bait, your chances are way, way down. Then I'm going to look for basically three things. I'm going to look for long points that are flat and taper way out towards the channel. I'm going to look for swings in the river channel that butt up beside a point, whether it be leading into a spawning bay, spawning cove, or just the mouth of a creek. And the other thing I'm looking for is those pods of bait in the mouths of short pockets right off the main channel.
No, that's perfect. So when you're looking at those areas and you're gonna, start throwing that jerkbait, let's talk a little bit about how you would approach the mechanics of that. The retrieve, the speed, the cadence. Early winter or late winter conditions. 40-degree water temperatures or so, 45-degree water temperatures. Talk about what kind of retrieve, speed, cadence, pauses. How are you typically working your jerkbaits to catch those fish in that cold water?
The first thing that's key to me, which is what makes our J121 so special, the new jerkbait, is you need to be able to make a long cast. The long cast sets up the whole thing. It allows you to go through a whole different gamut of jerk, pause, letting it sink, counting to 10, count to 5, jerk, pause, and figuring out the way the fish are acting. Now, your cadence and catching the fish are going to be relative to how the fish are set up on the structure, whether they're on the sides of the points, off the end of the dock, or if they're out suspended in the middle of a cut. You've got to get that bait to them because they're not really wanting to chase it. Now, as the weather warms up, you can speed up and they're going to come after it aggressively and feed on it. But when it's cold, they want an easy meal. They're opportunistic feeders, they're predators, and they feed off dying bait this time of the year. So I'm going to make a long cast. My setup is a 7-to-1 Abu Garcia MGX, a 7-foot Veracity medium action rod. I use the medium action so I don't pull the bait out of their mouths. I will go anywhere from 10 to 15 pound line. I've gotten accustomed to throwing my jerkbaits on 15-pound line. I feel like on that long cast, I get a better hook set. I think that's important because you can lose a lot of fish on a jerkbait if they hit you on the long cast, especially if you're just outside the school and you land on top and you get one to bite. You need to have that little ever heavier line to drive that hook into them. That's another thing about the bait we came up with here at Livingston. It holds those 2X number 4 hooks. So you can use that heavier line. You can really drive that bait into their mouth, and you're not going to have as big a problem with fish straightening hooks and pulling off.
Hank, one of the questions that we got here was in relation to the positioning of fish throughout the course of the day, relative to how long you'll stay on fish before you'll decide, I need to move off, go somewhere else, and then come back a little bit later. Kind of what's your process as far as figuring out how fish are going to kind of relate vertically in the water column?
Well, in my experiences, all fish come to the bank, no matter how cold it is at night to feed. They come up there and feed. A lot of the bait fish will go up there at night because the water's a little bit warmer. This time of year, if I pull up on a pot of fish, especially early in the day, and they've already backed off and they're in, say, 17 to 20 foot of water, I'm going to wait. I'll probably fish for them for a little bit, just see if I can draw a strike. But I'll probably wait, mark it, and come back to them. And usually that same school of fish will pull up and they'll get up into 15 to 10 foot. And when they get into that range is when you can set up on them and you can really do the damage.
Oh, that's perfect, Hank. One other question we get a lot from people is colors of jerkbaits. So when you found these fish, you know where they're at, you know kind of where they're positioned in the water column. What colors, your top 3 colors, do you head out in the lake with to go catch these fish early in the year?
Basically, for me, I keep it pretty simple. I have always a French pearl, which is kind of an opaque, whitish-looking bait, and that's what I always start out with. That's one of the things that I think is really attractive, especially to big fish. And if you look through it, when jerkbait season starts, those opaque colors are the very first thing that gets it all going. The second thing is you go to the table rock. And the reason why I like table rock so much is it's a bright color. They can see it a long ways away. You can throw it a mile. Like this is a table rock right here. This bait is really, really bright. It's got good flash, and it's something that they're not seeing all the time. Fish have been caught throughout history on chartreuse spinner baits and bright color things. They chase them down. They like to do it. And probably the second thing I go to is any kind of chartreuse shad style bait. That's just a catcher all the way across the country, anywhere you go.
Now, are these colors at all relative to specific water clarity, Hank? Because the one thing that happens this time of year is you have weather systems throughout the late winter, early spring are going to kind of dictate the clarity of the water. So does that at all change kind of your menu as far as expanding different colors at all?
Color is an option. It's a choice for everyone. Everyone has their confidence colors they like to. Those are my 3 go-tos. And depending on water clarity, is when I'll throw a particular one more than another. But you kind of got to let the fish do that. I've seen situations where the water clarity wasn't so good, but they still wanted that translucent style bait, considering if it had been, just high pressure situation, a lot of fishing pressure situation. There's all kinds of things that go into it. There's not one set pattern. That's the great thing about fishing. You can do things a little bit off the chart and still be successful.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, Hank, I have right here what really is brand new to Livingston Lures is our tournament series Jerkmaster 121 in that chartreuse shad color you were talking about. You might want to show some of the folks there at home what's that, the table rock, purple hitch color right there in your hand. And then also, do you have the blue pearl color there sitting there on the table with you?
Yeah, I got it in the back.
In the package. And that green packaging, you're going to find our new tournament series, Jerkmaster 121, with our original EBS sound technology in there for you. And that's something that's just come out this year, along with our Jerkmaster 121D. Now, Hank, you want to talk a little bit about how you helped design this Jerkmaster 121 with the tournament series and the deep there?
Yeah, it's really been something that's been quite time consuming, but we wanted to make sure we got it right, and I think we did. We've experimented with lots of different transfer chamber styles, weights, hooks, split rings, everything that goes into making the bait what it is today. I think when we finally came down to it, though, and got the transfer chamber right, we realized we really had something special with this bait. Like I said, it has the EBS sound, and it's got the shad, so it's user-friendly. As soon as it hits the water, it's activated, it's ready to go. And like I said, you could cast this bait a mile. And the hooks that come on with it, it's not your standard, number 6 light wire hooks that are going to come on jerk baits. When you're going to catching big fish on this bait, these hooks are going to drive in their jaw, and you're going to have the confidence to know, hey, I've got a good hook in this fish, and I'm going to get him in the boat.
Joel, you think you had a question?
Yeah, Hank, to expand a little bit more on sort of the development and the design of this brand new bait, let's talk a little bit about how it relates to depth and action. Now, obviously, you've got kind of a little bit of a heavier bait, so let's talk a little bit about sink rates. Let's talk about all the other little things that kind of make this bait what it is.
All right. Well, we have 2 versions. I hope you can see that. That's the deeper diving, and here is the shallower diving. The thing that makes this bait unique is it's not going to truly suspend. It's not going to happen. You could change the hooks and maybe slow it down, but this bait is made to slow sink, just like the same action that a shad would have dying off. It's going to slow sink and flutter to the bottom. What makes this bait unique is the way the transfer system is set inside of it. So I can throw this bait a long ways, and I'm working it down, and I'm pausing it, jerk, 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 pause, jerk, jerk, pause, and I've got it in the strike zone, and I think it's around the end of that dock or over the top of that brush or right on those rocks where I think the bite should happen. With this bait, I have it at that kind of nose diving action. With my rod tip, one snap up, the transfer system is so slight that the balls will rotate to the back of this bait, and then all of a sudden, instead of this bait kind of gliding nose first down, it's going to go tail down. And that's where 90% of my bites with this bait since I've been using it happens, was when that bait changes directions.
Oh, that's perfect, Hank. That's something that's completely unique to our Livingston Lures Jerkmaster 121 and 121D. Now, something as a question here came in from Kendall on our live feed is, sink rates and jerk baits. Everyone knows that line has something to do with that. What specific line are you using to throw the Jerkmaster 121, and how does that affect the sink rate of the lure or the action of the lure?
Well, my line of choice, the only line I throw is P-line 100% fluorocarbon. I think you need to throw fluorocarbon when you're jerk baiting just for the feel and the low stretch. Now, once again, line preference is going to be personal. If I'm fishing ultra clear water, way out off the bank, I might go down to 10 and 12 pound line. There's nothing there they're going to break me off on. I can get them up in the boat. It's not that big a difference. Now, if I'm fishing around structure, brush tops, the ends of docks, things of that nature, I'm going to go to that 15 pound line because I have the confidence in that fluorocarbon that it's going to get me the bites that I need, and I'm going to be able to pull them away from it. Line has come so far. It's just incredible the things you can do with it now, and it's super strong. But what fluorocarbon does, it keeps that bait down in the water column. There's no float to the line at all.
I'm going to drop a quick reminder here, Nick and Hank, that this is all part of the Livingston Fish with a Pro sweepstakes. So basically, you can win a day of fishing with Hank Cherry or the other Livingston pros. All you have to do, Nick, is get your text out. All you have to do is go to websites, run us through the numbers you have to do to qualify to win a fish with Hank.
Yeah, you just text EBS to 313131. Text EBS to 313131 to win a fishing trip, to enter to win a fishing trip with Hank Cherry. And also you can go there right below. You're going to find on our YouTube page, there's a link you can enter as well to enter to win a fishing trip with Hank. Now we also thank you guys for watching our seminar here, and we're going to continue to go through the whole hour. But as a special promotion for you guys, you can actually purchase any Livingston Lures jerkbait 25% off on the livingstonlures.com website using code HANK. H-A-N-K. As simple as Hank is a name. You put it in the coupon code, you get 25% off any Livingston Lures jerkbait, Jerkmaster 121, Jerkmaster 121D, all of those there at livingstonlures.com. So it's a good opportunity for you guys to get something. Just hit the website. Just after you guys been developing them, Hank's been able to get them on the market there, and they're on the website ready for you to get. 25% off. So it's a good opportunity for you guys.
Hank, we're going to go back here to the winter jerkbait option here in a little bit, but a couple of questions that we got prior to this webinar was using the jerkbait outside of the wintertime. I mean, I know for a fact that you have thrown that thing in the fall, you've thrown it in the summer, you throw it kind of year-round. What are some of the kind of yearly applications for this bait? I mean, is it as applicable as you think it is? I mean, throughout the entire country and throughout the entire calendar year?
Yeah, I don't think there's anywhere we're going to travel on the Bassmaster Trail, anybody that's fishing, it's not a bait just totally for cold water scenario. I mean, if fish are up shallow chasing bait, you can catch fish on a jerkbait. If you just want to go out and catch them, you can do it. I mean, there may be other things that are a better option at that time, but you can still catch a few key fish on this bait. Take you back to a couple years ago, we were at Lake Chickamauga. It's the middle of the summer, and I caught them jerking over the grass. You just got to have confidence in what you're doing, just like anything else in life, to be successful. And like I said again, though, where this bait is going to shine is on its castability. If you take it up north, the summertime, smallmouth, sight feeders, we have these bright colors. You're going to be able to throw this bait a long ways, but you have to rip it fast, especially in the summertime, especially for those smallmouth, because one, they have a bad attitude, and two, they love to chase things. There's nothing better, no funner way to catch them than on a jerkbait, and this one is going to be phenomenal when it gets up north.
We're going to get back to that smallmouth thing here in a little bit, but I want to go ahead and continue on. You mentioned Lake Chickamauga. We got a question, and I have to apologize. I deleted the name of the user. I don't know who said this question, but the question was about fishing jerkbaits on the Tennessee River, specifically this time of year right now. I mean, just because of the way that the water moves through Chickamauga and Pickwick and Kentucky Lake and so forth. Do you have any advice for that particular application?
My advice, especially not just the Tennessee River, but any chain. The Tennessee River is special in itself because it is by far probably the best river system for catching big fish. I mean, it's just full of giant fish. You want to concentrate on the same thing. Current breaks, the backside of points, anywhere that rudder's running over, creating an eddy where those fish can sit in there and kind of get out of the main current, especially this time of year, because those are the kind of places that bait's going to shift up into to die off. There's a lot of little backwater cuts, housing developments, coves, and that stuff right off the main river. Those fish will gather, and you can catch them jerking in the mouths of those. The only problem on the Tennessee River you can have is the water clarity. Like I said, it's important to have at least 12 to 18 inches to really catch them jerking. 3 foot is probably perfect. But like I said, I've seen situations where I've caught them in very, very dirty water. And on the Tennessee River, with barge traffic and other things, your water clarity can change from hour to hour depending on what's going on.
That's fantastic.
One quick follow-up to that. Nick, I'm sorry to interrupt you there. Quick follow-up to that because you talked about this. JJ from Florida wants to know about using the jerkbait in Florida. You mentioned a couple of conditions that are very similar to Florida. Shallow water, dirty water, a lot of vegetation. Give us some advice on the best way to fish a jerkbait, and do you want to go back to the old Stickmaster in a situation like that?
You could go with the Stickmaster, especially if they're up in 2-3 foot of water over the grass. It's not going to get down. It's going to push a lot more water and have a bigger side-to-side action. But with this new bait, especially with all the cold fronts that come in Florida, and when those fish get out in that 6 to 8 foot grass, and they've seen so many rattle traps and baits of that nature, this bait will come along and catch them. And never, ever pass up a chance if you're catching fish on a shell bed in Florida not to turn around and throw the jerkbait and catch them, because you will get a few extra bites.
That's something that grass people don't necessarily associate. Jerkbait fishing in the grass. So it was great. We had more than a few questions from guys living down in Florida talking about how they can catch fish with jerkbaits down those grassy lakes. Now, another question from Elijah that actually leads on to this is, does rod tip angles matter? Do they matter when you're working your jerkbait and changing up the technique of those twitches and those pauses? Does the rod tip angle matter in your presentation and when you're trying to change it up?
Rod tip angle definitely matters when fishing a jerkbait. Probably the most important part of the rod tip is having it in a position to where you can set the hook and get a good hookup. If I'm fishing grass or I'm fishing it down the side of something, like a dock or a seawall, things of that nature, my rod tip is more on a, I guess you'd say, a horizontal plane, kind of coming side to my side. If I'm looking for depth on a long cast, it's more of a vertical. That's just the difference of letting the bait get down deeper and me sweeping it side to side, trying to keep it up myself. It all depends on to where you're at. But you never want to have your rod above your waist, and you never want to have your rod away from your center. It's no different than if you went to open a jar of ketchup. You know, you have a bottle of Heinz 57. You're not going to hold it 5 feet away from you and try to squeeze it off. You're going to put it up by your chest and squeeze on the bottle to turn the cap. That's where your power is. This is your power zone in here. As long as you're keeping the rod in there, and you don't ever want the rod up. You always want to keep it down. There might be times like you want to snap it up, but it's always going to come back to level or less than level.
Oh, that's great, Hank. Well, we were just talking in the office here earlier about switching that rod tip angle up as you're fishing, on a single cast. Can you talk a little bit? We're out on Lake LBJ here in Texas catching monsters on the Jerkmaster 121. Can you go through that technique that you were using here in Texas, the water temperature, and how you were working that jerkbait to catch those big largemouth yesterday?
We were out there and the water temperature was teetering around 59 to 60, which in this part of the country, most of those big females are wanting to pull up to get on the bed. We were fishing over scattered grass off the sides of points around the fronts of docks. And basically, early on, it was very quick. It was like the third cast when I caught the first one. When I got the bait to the grass, I snapped it up to get it to shoot up. And that's when the first one bit. And the rest of the day, every other bite was the same way. As soon as I thought I was close to the grass or was going to bury that thing in the grass, I would just give it a slight snap up with my rod tip just to get it to shoot up. Just a little erratic action just to try to trigger a few bites, and they were smoking it.
That's fantastic, Hank. Well, I think we got another question coming in from the live feed. Joel, you got another question for us?
So the question that we've actually held here for a little bit is a little bit more about just kind of the physicality of throwing jerkbait. I believe that the question was from Hal. Wants to know about just the process and your advice on throwing a jerkbait all day long. If you've got any sort of kind of a specific motion or a specific way to kind of conserve your energy and your muscle strength throughout the course, because this is obviously a very active bait presentation. This is not something where you just throw it out there and turn the rod handle. You've got some motion involved.
Yeah, this throwing a jerkbait all day is pretty much it's a workout. I mean, it's like riding an exercise bike. You're constantly going. The first thing I try to tell people to make their jerkbait fishing easier is to go out and practice throwing the bait into the wind. Anybody can throw it with the wind. That makes it easy. You need to learn to throw the bait into the wind. Once you've mastered that, your casting part is done a little easier. As far as limitations, some people are not as strong or physically fit as others. I don't think that matters so much. There are ways you can use the wind and conditions to make yourself or make the bait presentable to the fish. Only thing I can say is pay attention to how you hold the rod. I know that sounds funny and that's just going to sound weird, but everybody has their own way of doing things. I've just figured out the less fingers I keep on my reel and rod when I'm snapping my hand, it's less hand cramps I get, and it's just easier on my forearm to control the rod, and it lasts longer throughout the day. The harder the grip you keep on that rod, it seems like your arm just wears out faster, especially when it's cold, because your hands will cramp up and your arms will cramp up regardless of what you do if you're out there in the cold.
Makes sense, especially anglers that have been fishing all day, conserve that energy. It definitely is a high impact technique compared to most other types of fishing, especially a jig or a drop shot, whatever. So we actually have a question coming on the live feed from Dave. He's a hardcore Livingston fan, and he wants to know really why, how does EBS sound technology give you an advantage there with your jerkbaits?
I not only think that the EBS technology that we have here at Livingston gives me an advantage with my jerkbait, I think it gives me an advantage with all our baits. Specifically with the jerkbait design, everybody asks me, this question has probably come up there, do they catch more fish? I can tell you this, I catch a lot of fish on a jerkbait. I could probably catch a lot of fish on any jerkbait that I pick up because that's what I like to do. Without a doubt, hands down, 110%, they hit this jerkbait harder than any one I've ever thrown in my entire life. I told the guys earlier today, they hit this bait like they're trying to kill it, which I think in turn, hookups are so much better. 90% of the fish you catch from this bait will be head first in their mouth. It's amazing when you look at it. And that in turn, with them hitting it so hard, your hookup ratio is going to be better, which in turn I think makes it fishing friendly for everybody.
Kind of expand on that a little bit too, Hank. So I was out with you one day on your local home lake there, and you caught a giant crappie on the Jerkmaster of all things. I mean, as far as just other species that you can catch with a jerkbait, what else is there out there?
You know, traveling across the country, jerkbait fishing, all the places we go, you catch all kinds of things. You catch smallmouth, you catch largemouth. I've caught 1.5-pound brim. I've caught 3-pound brim out there at Lake Havasu, those big freaks of nature, whatever they call them, red ear sunfish. You can catch chain pickerel. You can catch pike. You can catch walleye. You can catch about anything that swims on a jerkbait if you get in front of their face and it's that thing. But I think what specific to our baits with this sound is when it's in the water and that thing's activated, and that shad sound's going off, that's the predatory instinct of anything swimming. They all feed on fish. And I think that's the key feature to this bait.
I want to go back and expand on something you talked about a little bit earlier about the new green packaging. So basically, that is the tournament series, which is one single sound, and that sound is what again?
That's the EBS shad. It goes perfect with the jerkbait. You know, we offer the EBS crawl and the original EBS, but the shad fits the bait perfectly. I mean, you know, think about what you're throwing. You're imitating shad. That's what you want to throw. That's what the fish are feeding on, especially when that shad dive's going on. This bait they just like it. I mean, it's hard to explain. I tell everybody, don't believe me. Once you throw it, you're going to come back and tell me. And I've had people say the same thing. Man, they hit that thing so hard, it's like it's alive. Well, that's what we're trying to accomplish.
That's great, Hanks. You know, we actually got a couple really good questions coming in here from the live feed, but I want to take a quick second to have everyone be entered to win a signed Jerkmaster 121 from the man, Hank Cherry. He's actually got 5 of them sitting there in front of him ready to sign for you. All you got to do is type the 25% off coupon code HANK, H-A-N-K. Type it in the live feed there to enter to win one of 5 signed brand new Jerkmaster 121s. Now, you know, one question there on the live feed, everyone typing in there, is catching fish on jerkbaits, getting them to hit, and how hard they strike a Jerkmaster 121. Keeping them hooked up to the boat. That was one question we had there. Is, you know, we have customers trying to land these fish and they're jumping, the big smallmouth jumping like crazy. And how do you keep those fish pinned and, you know, get a high landing percentage of those fish?
Well, you know, with this bait in particular, like I've said before, I tell everybody, this doesn't come with your everyday standard lightweight number 6 hooks. It comes with those number 4s on it. And when you drive those hooks into those fish, your chances increase they're coming in the boat. I'm not saying you're going to catch every one of them. No, that's just fishing. That's part of it. That's catching. There's a difference. But this bait, as hard as they hit it, I would rather have them hit the bait and take my chances with them getting it head first and hooking them up than coming up and just swatting at it. You know, and I think with that EBS in the bait, you don't get that swatting. You get, I'm coming up and I'm eating you, I'm killing you right now. Boom. And that, I think, is definite a go, especially for me.
Mm-hmm. Now, those, you know, and they strike it so hard, though, you know, those fish are jumping like crazy. I was saying big smallmouth. I've had so many smallmouth, you know, come off flying 3 feet in the air. Is there anything with your rod tip angle or playing the fish that you do to keep those fish from jumping? That's something that everyone's always lost. You know, fish that have jumped straight up in the air. Is there any rod technique that you use to try and keep those fish down?
Be honest with you, when the good Lord made a smallmouth bass, He made no directions on how to control one of those suckers. I've seen them go 5, 6 feet out of the air, have hooks in the mouth, and hooks getting to the tail. I mean, there's no way to control them. The only thing I can tell you is when you get the hook in the smallmouth, you keep them cranking, you keep the rod tip down and get them to the boat. And when you get them there, you get them in the boat, because once you have that chance to land them and you don't, and it gets to run off, that's when 90% of the fish get lost on a jerkbait.
Hank, I'd like to kind of expand on that real shortly, but I'd like to remind everybody that this particular webinar is kind of the kickoff to Hank's section of the Livingston Fish with a Pro sweepstakes. Basically, you, Nick, can qualify, anybody who enters can qualify to win a fishing trip on, is it going to be Douglas Lake, Hank? Is that where we're going to take the winner of your particular one?
My winner is coming to Lake Norman, and we're going to go crush spot.
Lake Norman. All you got to do is just text EBS to 313131. You can go search around the Livingston Lures website and find a link to enter as well. But the bottom line is this: this is the kickoff. Over the next month or so, we're going to feature a lot of jerkbait technique information on the website from Hank himself. A quick reminder on that. So, largemouth and smallmouth. Is there a significant difference in your mind, or any difference at all, when you're fishing a jerkbait for these two different species?
Well, when smallmouth come to mind, and most of my experience has been in the warmer months. So the first thing I think of with them is speed. I haven't yet gone anywhere that you can move it too fast to catch a smallmouth. Now I think a largemouth has less the attitude of a smallmouth, but it is a great way to catch big ones, especially in early spring when they're pulling up. They haven't really been, they're not up there yet where they've been beat on the bed and everybody's fished for them. They've been weighed in tournaments. You know, this is when those big groups of those big fish are first pulling up there, and things magically can happen with this bait when you find those big herds of fish that get up there and they get in that 6, 8, 10 foot of water and they're just kind of waiting for that next moon phase to move back. This is the perfect way to catch them on a jerkbait, especially one this size. That's another thing we haven't talked about. This isn't your standard size jerkbait. You know, this is a good size bait. You're not throwing this bait to catch small fish. I'm not going out and say, this is the bait I'm going to go catch 5 keepers on. That's not what this bait's for. This bait is designed to go out and catch big fish.
Let's talk about what that 121 stands for. There's a reason why it's called the 121.
Yeah, it's the 121 milliliters. Most of the jerk baits now are in that 110 to 112 to 113 range. This bait is about it's kind of fits right in the middle of a section where there are no other baits like it on the market. This one kind of stands out by itself, and along with the EBS that's in the bait, that's what kind of makes it kind of unique. Now, am I telling you that, hey, you're going to take this bait right here and you're only going to catch big fish? No, because little fish have to eat too, and sometimes 12 inches are the difference between me making a check and not making a check, so I'll take them too. But at the same time, to get this bait to cast the way we want it to get the transfer chamber the way we want it, with the sound and the new battery, and these big hooks, which I can't say enough about. These hooks are a lifesaver on those bigger fish. We had to go this bigger style bait, and I wanted something to be off the norm, you know, something we hadn't seen before, and this was a way to get in this category with this bait in this size.
Oh, that's great. Well, you know what? You were talking largemouth and smallmouth. Well, I actually have a question on the live feed about spotted bass. And how do you attack those spotted bass that are out there feeding on herring, on herring? How do you attack those fish with a jerkbait, and is it any different than when you're fishing for smallmouth or largemouth?
Well, you know, probably the attitude of a spotted bass, you know, a lot of the northern guys are going to get mad at me. Like I said, a smallmouth bass is always mean, but there's no more aggressive feeder swimming in the water than a spotted bass, especially one that gets up 3 or 4 pounds, because he will eat and try to eat anything that swims in the lake. That's how aggressive they are. And for years, everybody thought the way to catch big spotted bass was on a drop shot or on a shaky head. Now all of a sudden, guess what? We're catching 4 and 5 pounders on a pig and jig. We're catching 4 or 5 pounders on 7-inch swim baits. Well, this bait right here, especially when they get around the herring and the long castability, which is good because spotted bass are super fast, especially when they're feeding on bait and pushing bait. You're going to be able to keep up with the school and throw that. But same thing again, those fish are mean and aggressive. So when you hook it up, you want to have these big hooks. Like on this bait right here, they're going to keep them buttoned and get them to the boat.
Hank, I want to go back and do a quick reminder of your terminal tackle setup. I want to talk about the action of the rod and the speed of the reel and so forth. I mean, because that's one part of this whole equation that I think a lot of kind of newish, beginner-ish jerkbait anglers don't really quite get. And what exactly is it as far as you're looking at, as far as the specific length and the specific action of the rod and the actual speed of the reel?
The speed of the reel, I've used the same speed now for I can't tell how many years, a 7-to-1. I like to be able to take up the line quick. I fish kind of fast, a little ADD sometimes, so I got to keep moving. That's when I'm in my zone, is when I'm moving and casting and keeping going. That 7-to-1 allows me to do that. That MGX from Abu Garcia is a light reel, so there goes back to the strength issue and weighing on the arms. There's not a lot of weight there, so I can carry it a long ways. That reel also holds a significant amount of line that allows me to make those long casts, whether I'm using 10 or 15-pound line. It's always fluorocarbon on the line. The rod, a medium action rod. Like I said, my preference over the past couple years has been the Veracity 7-foot. It's a 7-foot medium fast tip. You know, you want that tip to give when you get into those fish, but when you get about a quarter of the way down the rod, you want to start stiffening it up, and that's going to help you drive the hook into those fish and pull those fish away from structure and get them to the boat. We talk about the cast, and I haven't really mentioned this, but my best point I can get you on the cast to try the next time you're out on the water, which I do a lot, and I never really paid attention to it until one day when I was trying new things and watching where the fish hit, is I'll make a cast up in front of the boat, and as I cast towards the front of the boat, I'll kick the trolling motor, which causes my line to kind of have a half moon bend in it. And what this does, and what I've seen over the years, especially this time of year, is I kind of put the boat almost ahead of the bait. So as I'm working it back, the bait comes back to me on a half moon shape. And I've seen time and time again when fish are finicky, when that bait starts to rotate, the turn to come back to the boat, is when the strike always occurs.
Now that leads into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of jerkbait fishing. A question from Elijah is: are there any modifications that you make to the Jerkmaster 121 to adjust, say, the sink rate, or adjust how that jerkbait acts in the water, depending upon water clarity, cloud cover, or the depth you're trying to get to?
Yeah, Hank, run through. We've got a lot of questions about modifications of the bait. I mean, a whole bunch of those.
All right. Well, this bait coming out of the pack is ready to roll. I mean, it's like I said, it's set up with good split rings across the board, 2X number 4s, ready to go. You can adjust things. You can change the jewelry on the bait. When I mean jewelry, I mean the split rings. You can change the hooks if you want. I don't necessarily recommend it. I know everybody, just as I am, is kind of brand particular on hooks. I like this kind, I like that kind. Like I said, that's all a preference thing. That's what fishing's all about. What works for you. I don't think you really have to make any modifications to this bait. If I was going to do anything and I thought the fish were really finicky and I got into a severe cold situation, the first thing I would do would be lighten up all the jewelry across before I mess with the hooks, just to maybe slow my rate fall down just a tad. But at the same time, you can slow that rate fall by changing your line. Do I want to take time to take off 4 split rings, or do I just want to change line on the reel? But like I said, this bait out of the pack is ready to be fished in about any situation I can think of.
So Hank, we've had a series of questions about fishing the jerkbait in stained water, but we have one question here from a fellow Washingtonian about fishing it in gin clear water, which is what we have up in this part of the country. Gin clear water, and not necessarily the presence of shad. So what's your advice for a guy who wants to throw a jerkbait somewhere that's got super clear water and not a population of shad?
Well, once again, with this bait, you're taking advantage of whatever kind of fish is predatory instinct to feed. If there's not shad there, they're feeding on gizzards, or they're feeding on some type of creek chub or sucker. It's all still a mimic. Fish he's not gonna go up to it and look at it and say, hey, that's not native to my area.
Right.
If you draw him in there, you just got to get him committed. Once you get him committed, he gets the green light, he's going to fish. Super clear water, once again, fluorocarbon, I think, is super important. That would be a situation where you probably need to be in that 10-pound line range, maybe even have to go to 8, depending on if it's that clear. But then again, you don't know if it could be super clear and the fish are around a bunch of boulders. You might want to still stick with that 12 and 15 just because you don't want to break off baits.
Perfect. Well, talking about up north, super clear water, cold water. We have a good question coming in about how long do you actually pause that jerkbait, that Jerkmaster 121, in cold water to get those fish to strike? I mean, one question came across: what's the longest time you've ever let the jerkbait pause before you actually had a fish come up and strike it?
The pause on the jerkbait, once again, is going to be according to the fisherman. I mean, how patient you can possibly be. You figure with our sound, with EBS sound on this particular bait, you've got about a 2.5 second to 3 second intervals that it's going off. So you figure in a 12 to 15 second pause, they could hear that possibly 2-3 times full length. So you're letting the EBS do its work. I have seen situations where I've had to throw out, get the bait down, jerk, pause, and there was no number. It just felt like an eternity. And sometimes you just see your line just dart off, or you go to jerk back into it and it just loads up. In that cold water situation, fish tend to sneak up on things a lot more. But at the same time, when you're in a cold water situation, you get one of those warm days, those fish come up out of that little bit deeper water that you're having to catch them in, and that's when they get mean and really strike things. So the pause thing, it can change from day to day. I've seen it change from hour to hour just by the weather. You know, if it's cloudy outside, if it's sunny outside, if the wind's blowing a little bit, if the wind's not blowing. You know, one of the toughest times to catch fish is when it's really cold, sunny, and no wind. And that's when I'm going to take my time, make long casts, jerk, jerk, the long pause, and let the EBS do its thing.
Now that leads into another great question about EBS we had coming in from Brian is, you know, what's the difference between the tournament series, the brand new tournament series Jerkmaster 121, and the Jerkmaster 121 with Multitouch? You know, what's the difference between those two baits? And you know, using Multitouch, do you ever change up those sounds, or you just kind of set it and forget it?
With the Multitouch, you know, you have the option of the three sounds. You know, they have the original, the shad, the crawdad, and the silent, which, you know, it pretty much gives you 4 baits in one. I'm not a huge fan of silent on anything, but I have seen situations where a silent bait definitely in high pressured situations really does the job. The main difference in the two baits, I have to say, you can't see it. If I had proven you can see it, is the transfer chamber. You know, you're talking about not the distance in feet you can throw the bait. You're talking about distance in yards. When I say yards, I mean 15 to 20 yards further, which is going to get the bait further away from you, easier to get to the fish. You're staying back off of them. You're not having to spook them. You can get it down there and effectively fish the bait. So the biggest difference is that transfer chamber. And then on top of that, look, there's no setting this bait. This bait's on shad. It hits the water. It's on go. It's ready to go hunting. It's ready to catch fish.
I've got a super quick one here from the questions. This is going to be a little bit outside your comfort zone, Hank. I don't imagine that you're a kayak fisherman, but there are kayak fishermen who want to throw these baits. And Yakenstein wants to know, how do you fish the jerkbait from a kayak point of view? So basically, let's try to translate that. Maybe you're not necessarily in a kayak. Maybe you're in just a smaller boat where you don't have the ability to fish it the way that you would normally. What's your advice there?
You know, you'd probably just have to set the kayak up more at your target, more at a I would say a horizontal positioning to your target, and you're going to have to sweep to the side, trying to keep your rod as parallel to the water as possible to get it to work right. I still think it's not going to affect the amount of fish you catch. Well, now your distance is definitely going to be cut down when you're sitting as far as low to the water in a kayak, but still you should be able to effectively catch fish on the bait.
No, that leads into another great question, Hank, from the live feed is, and we actually talked about this earlier, someone asked it while we were sitting getting set up, is so for kayak fishing or fishing off the bank, you only maybe have 1 rod or 2 rods to use, and you want to switch up between a bunch of different baits. So the question is, do you ever use like an easy clip or a quick lock clip on your jerk baits, and can you use that and still get, you know, great action out of your baits?
Me personally, my preference, I do not use it. I like a split ring or sometimes the occasional small loop knot to the bait. I think anything you add extra to the nose of that bait, especially if you're around grass or fishing a pond or something with a lot of debris in the water, that clip on the front of that bait is going to catch trash, and it's going to just take away from the action and presentation of the bait.
Now, on that clip, the same person asked, you know, what knot are you using to tie to that split ring? What's your favorite knot to use when you're using fluorocarbon on your Jerkmaster 121?
You know, I've been asked that a million times, and I'll go back. It's the same answer. It's never changed. My father, who created all this mess by teaching me how to fish, taught me a knot when I was probably 4 years old, and I've used the same knot since I was 4 years old. It's the Harold Cherry knot. That's all I can tell you. There's nothing to it. It's the knot that I tie. I haven't seen any other knot like it. It's just the knot that I tie. I've been comfortable with it. I tie it across the board on all my baits.
All right, the Harold Cherry knot. All right,
I think that's a seminar all its own right there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to write that down in my book, and I'm going to have to look that up online, Hank. I know you're not much of a computer savvy person. I'm going to have to go look that up on Google.
You can do it, or just call my dad. That'd probably be the best way.
Hey, a quick reminder, guys, if you're watching this and you've heard Hank talk about the brand new J21, the tournament series, all the jerk baits from Livingston, If you purchase those with the promo code HANK, that's HANK, go to the Livingston Lures website, and orders that you make for the jerkbaits are 25% off. 25% off just because of this webinar.
Yeah, no, and then, you know, you can go on there, livingstonlures.com, use the coupon code HANK, get 25% off any jerkbait, any of our Livingston Lures jerkbaits. But talking about that Harold cherry knot really quickly, Hank, if you'd do us a favor, we can interview your dad, get some pictures of that knot, and post it on our Facebook page for everyone to see if you'd be willing to do that for us.
Oh, he would do it. Like I said, it's not anything. I don't think it's a wonder knot. It's just something he taught me at a young age, and I've never changed. You know, if it's not broke, don't fix it. You know, that way, really, with me, it keeps a part of him with me at all times on the water.
Oh, that's perfect. Now, well, Hank, you know, I got another really good question coming in here. Summertime, fishing over schooling fish in the summertime, now with the Jerkmaster 121. Is there any specific technique that you do for those schooling fish, those fish that are up busting on the surface, and maybe the followers that come out of those schools, you necessarily can't, you know, get to attack the lure. They follow it all the way to the boat. Is there anything special that you do with a jerkbait in those situations to get more bites?
Well, you know, to be honest with you, sometimes in those situations, that's when you have to put the jerkbait down. Followers do not get paychecks. Followers don't put fish in your boat to have fun. You can play around with your cadence, and sometimes, especially with this bait, if you can get it into the bulls when they're popping shad out of the water and just kill it, don't move it. Just as soon as it hits contact with the water, let that EBS do its thing, and you can get a lot of bites with that. And you can get a lot of big bites with that, not moving it, because sometimes those bigger fish in those schools will kind of sit there and let those little ones do their thing, and a little shad falls out of the way that's been killed and injured, they'll come up and get it. That's one thing you can do. But, you know, that's usually a time, if I see that going on and they're following that jerkbait and they're still busting and going crazy, that's when I'm going to switch up and I'm going to the walking balls.
Makes sense. Well, that's perfect, Hank. You know, now I actually got a really great question in here on the live feed in regards to the Bassmaster Classic and fantasy fishing. Now, this is a little bit off the wall, isn't necessarily baits and techniques, but, you know, what technique do you think the Jerkmaster 121 is going to play a role there at Grand Lake here in 3 weeks of the Bassmaster Classic?
The guys are going to have the bait. It's all going to depend on how much of that water is run through that lake and the water clarity. When we were there last time, I called them. The water wasn't real clear, but the fish were in tight groups, and if you found them, you could catch them. I'm going to say there's going to be a few fish caught every day on that bait. There's no doubt in my mind. It's just a big fish bait. That's a big fish tournament. You know, nobody is going to remember 2nd through 56 how many are fishing this year. It's the guy that's going to win it. So I think, you know, the guys we've got going, they're going to have this bait in their hand. I wouldn't be surprised to see somebody catch some big fish on it, you know. And if the situation hits right, kind of like it did when I was there, and they find the right group of fish, they hook up with them, put them in the boat, you could see a winner come off this bait.
Yeah, a quick reminder, the last time the Bassmaster Classic was at Grand Lake, Hank almost won it.
Thanks.
So take that wasn't meant to be an insult. Take his advice on Grand Lake. He knows a little bit about it. Hank, review really quickly. We've had a couple people, I think, who have joined in a little bit late and want to know a little bit more about the Jerkmaster 121, the 121 Deep. We've got questions about deeper diving, bigger bills. Review that really quickly if you could.
Well, the deep bait, you're going to figure, look, the shallower one with the smaller bill, we're looking out to 10 foot really searching with this bait. You know, we're looking for the 10-footer, that's the range. This bait is where we're going to expand beyond that. Another thing about expanding beyond this is the bait that's going to search the long points for you. You're going to be able to get this bait down deep. You still want to throw it up in that shallower water because your first series of jerks and pauses with this bait, you want to try to make contact with those rocks, with those stumps, before that point falls off to that channel, or before that point falls off to the middle of that cut. Now, some of your bites are going to happen when this bait is actually making contact with the bottom, but the majority of them are going to happen as soon as it leaves contact. Right there where that slight break is, that's where those big fish are going to be sitting, and that's where they're going to eat this bait up. That's the difference, and that's the advantage of having the deep diver compared to the shallow diver.
Is there any time, though, Hank, you know, when you're fishing over, you know, say 10, 15, 20 feet of water, that you experiment between the deep diver, the J121 Deep, and the regular Jerkmaster 121?
There is a time when you can do that, especially if I start catching them on the deep, and you start having a lot of fish follow the fish up that's hooked. You know, those fish are up there, especially with smallmouth. They get up there and they don't really run off from your boat. They kind of stay out there. That's the time when you would switch up when you're drawing them up off the bottom. You're not having to get it down as deep. Switch rods real fast and get a couple extra bites.
Oh, makes complete sense. Well, those deep fish that are coming up to eat jerkbait, and that's another question here, is what's the deepest water you've ever caught fish out of on a jerkbait?
See, that's kind of a tricky question because I've caught fish on a jerkbait sitting in 50, 60 foot of water, but the fish weren't that deep. But probably the deepest I've ever had one, I'd say probably 24, 25 foot deep would be the deepest I ever hooked up with one. And that was way back when, before, the EBS technology, before everything. That's back to the homemade days and suspend strips and, searching for something like this. Flash forward 15 years from now, here I've got it in my hand,
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, another question. This is something that over those suspended fish, over deep water, they're maybe only sitting 10, 15 feet over, under the surface. Is when you're casting that jerkbait, do you ever let it sit before you actually start working it? Just let it sit on the surface, like say a dying bait fish laying there. Do you ever do that when you're fishing over those schooling fish?
If the fish are actively breaking, I'll try to throw in their breaks and just let it sit there and do its thing. But most of the time, in that situation, you're going to be in a colder situation, and when they're out there, they're not wanting to be bothered, and they're not bothering anybody. They're sitting somewhere off the side of a break, and it's 40 foot deep, and they're up in that 10 foot starting the sun. And your job is to make a long cast to get this bait out of the light refraction to get it down to where it gets dark. And that's the difference between being able to catch them and not catch them. And that's when you can make that long cast and get the bait down to where it needs to be and let the EBS do its thing and get your bites.
Hank, you made a reference earlier to having to put the jerkbait down, but is there ever a time when you will combine the jerkbait with another specific bait? I mean, is it one of those where you're just throwing the jerkbait and you're going to go with it until the conditions have changed so dramatically that you know you're not going to catch them? Or will you have like a secondary or backup pattern or thought in your head when you're throwing the jerkbait?
Every situation is different and unique to itself. And to me, it kind of follows, especially coming in this type of year, because the fish are moving from that, mid-deep winter haunt. They're moving up, going to get in those spawning areas. So I could have a pattern where I'm going from the jerkbait to some style of swim bait all the way to the viper and going to be throwing a glide bait. It just depends on how the day is going and how the fish are moving and what they're telling me. I don't want to sit there and try to force feed in the same thing. But at the same time, if they're biting the jerkbait and they quit biting one, say, I'm catching them, I'm killing them on this color. This is the color I'm killing them on. They quit biting it. First thing is going to go in my head, hey, guess what? Different color. And I might line up from a different direction, throw it to them, trigger more bites. And that's the thing about fishing. Like I told you, there's no right or wrong way to do it. You got to do it what works for you.
As we look forward to the 2016 season, there are a handful of fisheries that I know for a fact are going to serve you perfectly well with the new Jerkmaster. Talk a little bit about some of those fisheries, because I remember sitting behind you and watching you smoke them on Toledo Bend. You got to be excited about the fact that we're going back there again.
Oh, I can't wait to get back to Toledo Bend. That's one of those places that kind of left a sour taste in my mouth, not because of my tournament finish. I had a good finish there. The situation, there was another monster tournament trail that was going on at the same time, and my fish kind of got hawked from me, I guess you would say. The people that were in that tournament actually saw me catch my fish, came back the next morning, they're anchored up on the grass bed. But that's another place where those fish were on. They weren't on dying shad. They were actually on spawning shad. And those fish were really, really biting the jerkbait, biting it incredible. And I cannot wait to get this bait back there, especially because of the size of the fish in that fishery. They just crush it. We're going to Wheeler. It's got smallmouth, it's got largemouth. It's April. They're going to be up feeding. And there's a lot of places this year I'm really looking forward to throwing it.
Nick, are we running out of time here? Do we have time to enter some more codes here to win our prize pack?
Yeah, no, we got one more go around. Everyone, I got We have so far we have 4 winners. We have 1 winner left. You all got to do is type in that 25% off discount code Hank, Hank. You get 25% off all Livingston Lures jerkbaits tonight only. Type that in the live chat Q&A, and we have 1 more winner left for a signed Hank Cherry Jerkmaster 121. Be sure to type in Hank right now before the end of our seminar here, about 8 o'clock. We'll announce all the winners and make sure to get you guys out your signed Jerkmaster 121.
Hey, another quick reminder, too, while you're sitting there at the screen, pull out your cell phone and type in 313131 and send EBS to that, because that is the way that you can enter the Livingston Fish with a Pro Sweepstakes. You can win a trip to fish with Hank Cherry and all the other members of the Team Livingston Pro staff. You can fish with Randy Howell, Andy Morgan, all the rest of those guys, but you have to enter first. All you have to do is text EBS to 313131. This, of course, tonight is the kickoff to Hank's version, his month, I guess you'd call it, Nick. This is his month in the Fish with the Pro Sweepstakes. Yeah,
it certainly is, and you can also enter, you don't have to go by text, you can also go right below here. You'll see in the YouTube link below, you can enter directly online to enter that fishing trip with Hank there on Lake Norman. So as we end off our seminar here, you have a few more questions, Joel, have been coming in there over the live feed?
Well, so the one thing that's really cool about this whole webinar setup here is that you get to hear from people from literally all over the country. I mean, we've got people here from Ohio, from New York, from Florida, from Texas, and so forth. The one thing that I think is most people are interested in is how things apply specifically to their fishery. Like, I think everybody's trying to grab, like, how in the world can I take what Hank just told me and apply it straight to my fishery? And I guess, Hank, it just comes back to paying attention to the very basics of the things you need to look for when you're fishing a jerkbait, correct?
Yeah, and you just got to let the fish tell you what they want. I mean, you know, it's Mother Nature. You can't predict it. But once you get out there and you start fishing, you start getting a couple bites, if you pay attention to the subtleties, like perhaps where the cast landed, was it on the side of the point? Look up at the bank. Hey, was it a sand to rock transition? Was it on a point? Was there brush there? Was there rock there? If you pay attention to those little details and start putting the puzzle together throughout the day, you can have a great day out jerkbait fishing anywhere in the country.
We've got another couple real quick questions here about specific conditions that exist in the winter and the early spring. Let's talk a little bit about the play of the wind. Now, a windy day is, for you, it's perfect, correct?
Yeah, if it's windy and it's cold, I want to be in the wind. I want to be where it's crashing the most. That's where I want to fish, in the wind. Slick water is the hardest time to catch my jerkbait. Slick and sunny is usually death for a jerkbait fisherman.
Makes sense. Well, you know what? We got a lot of those Hank entries in here, that 25% off discount code entries here. That, by the way, that discount code is only valid until midnight tonight, so make sure you get your orders in. We have our 5 winners all ready to go right here. We wrote them down, chosen them here, so I'm going to name them off here. We have our 5 winners of the Hank Cherry signed Jerkmaster 121. We have Charles Costello, Michael Suggs, Mark Wynn, Rodney Hoople, and Cameron Baker. So guys, make sure you message us. You can message us through Google. We'll also post it here in the live chat. You can message us through Google or get us on Facebook or send us just a quick email there with your contact information. We'll make sure to get you guys out your prize packs. But we'll list the names here so you can check back with us to get those Jerkmaster 121s to you. And we really appreciate you guys' support. Now, Hank, now that Fish the Pro contest, you know, it just kicks off now. It's going through the rest of the month. How are you going to take those guys fishing on Lake Norman? I mean, what are you guys going to be doing out there? And say you're going to go in the summertime, right? What's the pattern you guys are going to be running out there to take them fishing?
In the summertime, we're probably going to do a little bit of everything. Probably have some tremendous topwater action in the morning. Get a chance to throw some new baits, especially new prop bait. A couple of things I got hidden around we haven't talked a whole lot about. Maybe even go do some drop shot and find some schooling fish. Maybe even catch a few fish out from under docks on a jig. It's a great time to be there. Especially if we can go and we get out there in the middle of the week when there's not a lot of jet skis or jet fleas, as we call them, and ski boats around. But it's a good time to be there and catch a lot of fish.
We should note that Mrs. Hank Cherry has chimed in and said that the actual name of that knot, Hank, is the poppy knot, and that Harold would be glad to put that knot together and put it on your fan page on Facebook.
We'll let him do it.
No, that's perfect, Hank. We want to, all these questions coming in here. We can't answer them all, but where can people find you on social media, to get these questions answered on a regular basis?
Well, really, the easiest way to do it is just everybody send all your questions to Nick. He can just have him do it. No, if you'll message me on Facebook, it's easy to look up Hank Cherry. I'll get back to you as fast as I possibly can. I love answering questions. Like I said, sometimes I'm out on the road and I kind of get lost in it. But if I get your question, I'm going to get back to you and give you the best answer possible. You may not like what I have to say. You might not want to hear what I have to say, but I'm going to speak the truth and tell you what I think.
Well, we always know you're a straight shooter, Hank. That's definitely something you're well known for. A very likable guy, and you're always going to shoot us straight when talking fishing techniques.
Well, that's the thing. Like I said, fishing's been my passion since I was a little boy, and I've given you and everybody else here at Livingston a hard time trying, especially to get this J121 taken care of and get it out. And like I said, it's come to fruition. We got it. Now it's just getting everybody's hands and look. This is an incredible bait. I'm very proud of it. I got my name behind it. I'm going to throw it. I've been throwing it. It just catches big fish, and I like the bait.
Certainly, Hank. Well, just a quick note, everyone. Like I said, that 25% off discount code is only valid for tonight till midnight. I'm going to pop up here on the screen really quickly that discount code. You see pop up here, 25% off all jerkbaits. All you got to do is type in code HANK, H-A-N-K. Super simple, straight shooter, just like the man himself. Go to livingstonlures.com. Brand new on the website is our Jerkmaster 121 tournament series and Jerkmaster 121 Deep. Get them in your hands before even everyone else out there fishing against you has them and kick their butts with it. So Joel, you have any last final parting words or questions coming in here from the live feed?
Couple more questions relative to colors, Hank. I think that's the one thing that a lot of people kind of focus on a little bit is specific colors. We've got questions here about brighter colors and deeper colors like reds and so forth. I mean, does it always have to be a shad color, or can you apply other colors? I mean, there are obviously more than just shad colors in the Livingston line. What are some other colors that you would also recommend?
You can apply other colors. Especially like we talked about in high fishing pressure situations where something off the wall might get you a few more bites. My preference is to stay around the chartreuses, the shad, the transparent colors. You can kind of go to the chartreuse blue, but really there's no need to go far away. If you were going to stray, it's not really a stray, but it's a bait that you're not going to see a lot of, and that color is the Ginrin color we offer. It's actually like this. It's kind of a green, brown back, silver / brown sides. It's a really good color.
Hold that up a little bit higher. Hold it up a little bit higher.
I'll get it out of the pack. Let's see it a little
bit.
There you go. It's a unique.
There you go.
Looking color.
Good.
Like I said, you don't see a lot of baits thrown, especially in jerkbait, that kind of have that. It looks like it's kind of bland and kind of blah, but when it hits the water, it's got a pretty good shine to it. But, overall, most of the time when you're catching them jerking, it's shad oriented, and that's what you want to key in, kind of like match the bait fish. That's the best thing I can tell you. I mean, you can experiment with color, and your favorite color might be black. I've seen situations where black smallmouth bass is just incredible. They'll crush a black jerkbait. They'll crush a black anything. That's just something they like. But you got to just take it throughout the country and just pay attention. Spotted bass love chartreuse. So that's the best thing I tell you. Whatever works for you is the color you want, and we have all the colors you need.
Oh, that's fantastic, Hank. In the new Jerkmaster 121, in the tournament series, is actually a question as folks are going through online, placing their orders for the brand new product. The Jerkmaster 121 and 121D are part of our new tournament series at a $12.99 price point. So that's something that for the folks on the live feed that are asking questions, you go down, scroll down through our website, and you're going to find the Pro Series, the Team Livingston Series, and then the Tournament Series. And the green packaging there at the dealers And then online, you can just look up Tournament Series at $12.99. Awesome price point, plus your 25% off Hank discount code. You'll be able to grab these, specifically the baits that Hank is talking about, there on our livingstonlures.com. You had something to say there, Joel?
Well, I was about to say, I mean, the 25% off code, you kind of beat me to it, Nick, but the bottom line here is that, I mean, the first price point is a great price, but the ability to buy these things at a quarter of a discount, these kind of discounts don't come along all the time. So I would advise everybody out there to go and take advantage of this while you can, because it's over at midnight, correct?
Yes, it is over at midnight, and so get your orders in now. Probably, we only have a limited run of these, coming in as our first production run, so definitely want to grab them now before they're all gone. And then you have to wait until maybe, the summertime to get your hands on them. There'll be a high prize bait, so definitely get those orders in, and we really want to say thank you all for listening to Livingston Live. We're going to be coming to you every 2 weeks talking fishing tips and tactics with our Team Livingston Pro staff, giving you an opportunity to buy baits at a discount with a flash sale and enter in to win a fishing trip with our Team Livingston Pros. This is what it's all about, is giving back to our customers, and we really appreciate your support. So
one quick reminder as well, guys. So Hank's not going to just disappear after the camera turns off here tonight. So Hank, as part of his Fish with a Pro month, you're going to see content, tips, and advice and blogs and so forth from Hank on the Livingston Lures website throughout the course of the month. So there may have been some things that we didn't get a chance to deal with here tonight because we only had an hour. But if you go to livingstonlures.com throughout the course of the next month, there will be some more kind of advanced tactics and tips in using the Jerkmaster 121.
Yeah, certainly. Hank will be at your disposal, really, there to learn more about how to fish Jerkmaster 121. So, Hank, I really appreciate you coming and actually you're here in San Antonio live in San Antonio, Texas, with us. We really appreciate you coming on the set here with Livingston Live and sharing your jerkbait knowledge. Thanks so much for helping us out and sharing really what all the knowledge you've built up here with your professional fishing career. So we just wanted to say thank you, Hank.
Thanks, I enjoyed it. I appreciate everyone tuning in, and tomorrow we'll be back out on LBJ catching some more big fish before I have to fly back.
Hey. He's going to try and, just for everyone before we end, he's going to try and sneak in an extra day here in Texas so he can go catch some more big fish on the Jerkmaster 121. So everyone, Joel, thank you so very much for helping us out here.
Glad to.
We know we're running a little later here Central Time, but everyone, thank you. Follow us, Livingston Lures, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You'll be able to learn from Hank the rest of this month, and make sure you get those orders in and enter to win a fishing trip with the man, Hank Cherry. Till next time, everyone, Livingston Live, have a good night.